The wind howled through the mountain pass, carrying echoes of snow shifting high above. Andrew pressed his gloved hand to the Jeep's window as he and his mentor, Brian, rounded the final bend. Below them, through a veil of mist, lay a shape that didn't belong, a rusted aircraft, embedded in the rock like a scar frozen in time. For years, the Mountainside Forensic Division had seen every kind of wreck imaginable, from twisted cars to fallen climbers. But this was different. Andrew remembered the moment the emergency call came in. The local sheriff's voice trembled. A hiker had stumbled upon what looked like a plane buried in the snow, its tail barely visible. The coordinates placed it deep in avalanche territory, a place no one had dared to explore for decades. As soon as Brian heard the words, "unmarked aircraft," his expression changed. His usual calm demeanor hardened into focus. "Tell them not to touch anything," he ordered sharply. "No one goes inside. We're on our way." Now, standing before the wreck, Andrew could see why. The fuselage was torn but intact, its wings crushed into the slope like an old wound sealed by time. "It looks ancient," Andrew whispered, "like it's been asleep for half a century." Brian didn't reply. He was staring at the serial number half buried under frost. His brow furrowed. Recognition flickered across his face for a moment before he hid it behind professionalism. Two officers stood nearby with the hikers who'd found the wreck. They spoke nervously, explaining how an avalanche had likely stripped away decades of snow, revealing the aircraft for the first time in 40 years. Brian's head snapped toward them. "You didn't go inside, did you?" The policeman shook his head. "No, sir. We just checked the tail and the number. That's it." Brian exhaled in visible relief. Andrew caught the shift immediately. That wasn't standard concern. That was personal. "What's the big deal?" Andrew asked quietly. "You act like the thing might explode." Brian looked up the slope, his eyes scanning the ridgeline. "Because sometimes, kid," he said, "the things buried in the past should stay buried." He told everyone to step back. "I'll go in alone," he said, grabbing his flashlight. "Old frame like this too unstable. One wrong step, the whole thing could slide right off the ridge." Andrew wanted to argue, but authority in Brian's tone silenced him. The young investigator watched his mentor disappear into the gaping darkness of the plane's doorway. The sound of boots against metal echoed for a few seconds. Then stopped. Minutes passed. The others exchanged uneasy looks. The icy wind whistled through the torn wing, creating a ghostly hum that set Andrew's nerves on edge. Then a loud creak. Everyone froze. Andrew's heart pounded as another sound followed, a groaning of metal under strain. "Brian!" he shouted. No answer. He grabbed his gear and ran for the entrance, but before he could enter, a figure emerged from the shadow Brian. His face was pale, his breathing fast. He grabbed Andrew by the shoulder and leaned close, whispering in a tone that chilled him to the bone. "Tell the police to leave. All of them. Right now." Andrew blinked. "What? Why?" "Do it," Brian snapped, eyes darting to the officers. "It's not safe for them here. Say the plane's unstable." The confusion in Andrew's mind twisted tighter, but something about Brian's stare, the fear, the urgency, made him obey. Within minutes, the officers and hikers packed up and drove off, leaving only the two investigators in the quiet, desolate clearing. When the last taillights vanished behind the ridge, Brian's expression changed completely. The tension melted into something else, excitement. A grin spread across his weathered face. "Now," he said softly, turning toward the wreck, "we can finally take what's ours." Andrew stared at him. "What's ours?" Brian's grin widened. "You'll see soon enough." Hours later, the night swallowed the mountains whole. The moon hung low over the ridge, casting a cold glow over the wreck. Andrew followed Brian through knee-deep snow, the silence broken only by the crunch of their boots and the rattle of gear. When they reached the plane again, Brian's eyes gleamed with purpose. "Help me open the cockpit hatch," he said, already climbing inside. The air inside the aircraft was still and heavy, thick with the smell of rust and fuel. Andrew swept his flashlight across the interior. Rows of torn seats, shattered glass, no sign of bodies. "It's empty," he murmured. "Not for long," Brian muttered cryptically, brushing snow away from a metallic floor panel between the pilot seats. The surface was engraved with faint lettering, a hatch sealed tight. "Here," he said, tapping it. "This is what I came for." Andrew frowned. "You knew this was here?" Brian didn't answer. Instead, he pried the hatch open. The metal groaned, sending a shiver through the plane's frame. Beneath it lay a narrow ladder descending into the dark. Andrew hesitated. "What is this place?" Brian's voice lowered. "A vault, built into the plane itself." Andrew climbed down first, the beam of his light cutting through dust and darkness. When his boots hit the floor, his breath caught. Brian! The cargo hold stretched before him like a buried cathedral. Crates, dozens of them, stacked to the ceiling. Some broken open, spilling their contents, gold bars, glittering jewels, bundles of old bills wrapped in brittle paper. The light bounced off the treasure in blinding reflection. Brian descended behind him, his grin wide. Beautiful, isn't it? My father built this plane. He robbed the National Reserve in '81 and used this to transport the loot. He never made it out of these mountains. Andrew turned, stunned. Your father was the pilot? Brian nodded slowly. And that means this treasure belongs to me. Andrew stepped back. The words hung in the air, cold and sharp. You've known this all along, he said quietly. Brian's tone shifted darker, harder. I spent 40 years searching for this wreck, 40 years chasing my father's ghost. Now, after all that, I'm not letting anyone take it from me. Not the state, and not you. Andrew saw it too late, the movement, the flash of metal. Brian swung the crowbar with terrifying speed. Andrew ducked, the iron bars slamming into a crate where his head had been a moment ago. Gold coins spilled across the floor like sparks. Brian, stop! He shouted. This isn't you. But the old man was gone, replaced by obsession. You were never meant to see this, he snarled. You're just a kid. You don't understand legacy. Andrew dove behind a pile of crates as another swing echoed through the hold. His flashlight clattered across the floor, beams spinning wildly over jewels and bones a skeleton still seated against the rear wall, a rusted pistol clutched in one bony hand. Your father, Andrew whispered. Brian froze. His gaze followed the light. Then the realization hit him. The silence that followed was heavy and hollow. My father died guarding it, Brian said softly. Then his voice hardened again. And I'll do the same if I have to. Andrew acted on instinct. He shoved the nearest crate with all his strength. The heavy wood toppled, smashing down on Brian and sending a storm of gold and dust into the air. The sound echoed like thunder through the empty fuselage. When the noise finally faded, Andrew's heart pounded in the silence. He called out no response. Brian lay unconscious beneath the wrecked crates, breathing faintly. Andrew stumbled up the ladder, his shaking hands fumbling for his radio. This is Agent Miller, he gasped. Request immediate rescue at Sector 9. I've got a downed plane and a suspect in custody. By dawn, flashing lights filled the canyon. The treasure long forgotten was recovered, catalogued, and returned to the National Vault. Brian was sentenced to life in prison for attempted murder and conspiracy. His name, once respected, became a warning whispered through the forensic ranks. As for Andrew, the story of the lost plane made headlines around the world. He never bragged, never smiled for cameras. When asked what he remembered most, he said softly, It wasn't the gold, it was how greed buries everything, even blood. The mountains kept their silence after that. The wind howled again through the canyon, over the rusted wings, carrying whispers of a story only two men ever truly knew.